Approaching the 2020 American election, the majority of political experts argue that Democratic candidate Joe Biden currently has the upper hand in polling against incumbent Republican President Donald Trump. However, polls can and have been wrong in the past, and each of the candidates will need to give it everything they've got. This election isn't a surefire win for Biden. He's going to have to follow certain crucial strategies in order to win in November. Also, before we begin, this video is not made to partisanly promote either candidate. It's meant to be a nonpartisan political analysis that we can all learn from. So let's jump right in. Arguably, one of the most important things Biden is going to need to do is significantly increase his digital presence through social media and online or television promotional capabilities. Due to the spreading of a certain microorganism going around right now, which will get me demonetized on YouTube if I say its name, so let's just refer to it as the current situation. The impact of campaign rallies is going to be decreased. Fewer people are likely going to be willing to go to campaign rallies, even though both Trump and Biden said they would still hold them, by making participants sign waivers before entering. Instead, a lot of contacting and getting their message out will take place through social media like YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and more, which is an area that Donald Trump has a distinct advantage in. Let's look at the statistics. Donald Trump has 82 million Twitter followers. Biden has 6.2 million. Trump has 20.4 million Instagram followers. Biden has 2.4 million. Trump has 486,000 YouTube subscribers. Biden has 66.4 thousand. Clearly, Trump has a much larger potential reach. And the thing about social media is that the more people are viewing your content already, the more people the algorithm will recommend your posts to. Also, Trump's following on all three of those sites is increasing at a greater rate than Biden's is. So Biden's social media disadvantage is getting larger with every passing day. What he should be doing, as the bare minimum, is getting his supporters in the Democratic Party at high levels to be circulating and mentioning his campaign accounts, so that more people can begin following him, and he gets the algorithm working in his favor to promote his content. That way, he can also get more moderates who would be voting either way, flowing towards his social media presence and taking in his message. Also, while we're on the topic of social media, please consider subscribing to Logical, but back to the video for now. Additionally, while we're on the topic of digital presence, Donald Trump also has a distinct advantage of free publicity from the press. Indifferent of whether said publicity is positive or negative coverage, it significantly increases people's consideration and knowledge of his policies. This is exactly what happened in the 2016 election against Hillary Clinton. He got a ton of free publicity from the media, constantly covering his controversial statements. Clinton even mentions this in her 2017 book called What Happened, and recognizes that she didn't adequately capture digital sound bites with the media. To counter Trump's free promotion from the media, Biden has to make even more bold statements that make for catchy sound bites, which the media cycle can play on repeat. That way, Biden can maximize the number of people his message spreads to, while minimizing costs associated with getting the message out there. Especially considering that major news stations such as CNN and MSNBC tend to lean Democratic, he needs to make sure to increase his share of promotion time on those networks. But not all of the strategies Biden needs to target are about the communication of ideas. Some relate to the ideas themselves. Leading up to the 2016 election, a lot of Americans saw Trump as more of an ideologically moderate candidate than the GOP had presented many times in the past, meaning that he was able to break through the Democratic blue wall against Hillary Clinton, appealing to many moderate Democrats in states like Michigan and Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, a lot of polls from 2016 classified Clinton as a liberal more than they did a moderate, presenting a trend in which Americans preferred the more moderate of the two candidates, since they were able to rally the moderates to go out and vote. Biden needs to use his image as a moderate Democrat in order to win back blue-collar middle-class voters in the Rust Belt, taking advantage of something which he is already good at in the past. Biden has always had a good edge in appealing to blue-collar men specifically, a group which Clinton lost in 2016. They'll play a significant role in this election, so Biden needs to focus on them. But this doesn't mean that he can ignore the more liberal side of the Democratic Party, something which Clinton was also unsuccessful at in the 2016 election. While the majority of the population saw her as a liberal, the image didn't necessarily represent her correctly. Trump was able to stigmatize her as a radical liberal for the majority of the population, but the left wing of the Democrats saw her as an uncompromising establishment moderate. She didn't even get Bernie Sanders' endorsement going into the presidential election. Biden has already done better with the further left, getting Sanders' endorsement for president, but this might not be enough for many liberals if they think he's too moderate. Therefore, they might not vote for him. As such, Biden needs to adequately present two different personas to two different groups, presenting a more moderate face to moderates and a more liberal face to liberals. Something which benefited Trump in 2016 was that the majority of conservatives saw him as conservative, whereas the majority of moderates saw him as moderate. He presented two different images, one for his base and one for the mass public, by presenting a vague image and many broad promises. People will see what they want to see. That's something that Biden can take advantage of going into this election. But these are just the national strategies that Biden needs to master for the 2020 election. He also needs some geographical areas of focus. According to the current polls, this is what the 2020 election map would look like if the vote were held today. Currently, it's looking good for Biden, but it also looked good for Hillary Clinton this far out from the election. No poll is a certain win, and this is by no means a win for Biden that he can take for granted. He has a very slim margin over Trump in Ohio, North Carolina, and Georgia, as well as a leading margin of under 5% in Florida, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona. These are all states Biden needs to defend his lead in with whatever he's got. The Rust Belt is where Biden can use some blue-collar charm to connect with blue-collar voters, using that approach to protect his lead in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Additionally, in Pennsylvania and Michigan, which are traditionally left-leaning states, he can paint Trump as too conservative, providing himself as a moderate alternative, since many polls present that American voters consider Trump much more conservative now than they did in 2016. when they thought he was more moderate. Biden also has a nice edge when it comes to older moderates who leaned towards Trump in 2016, which can help him go after snowbird states like Florida and Arizona, where many older Americans go after they retire. Those are some of the key demographics he needs to keep those swing states in his column. Although, there is one community which Biden is rapidly losing favorability with: visible minority communities. Although Biden initially had very high favorability with the African American community, the polling numbers associated with their enthusiasm for his campaign has been steadily dwindling. Meanwhile, Bernie Sanders consistently polled higher among Latino communities across the United States. Biden really needs to drive turnout among those two communities, only one of which he can do through his vice presidential pick. He has said that he would prefer a woman of color running for VP alongside him. That'll count for one of those communities, whichever the VP pick comes from. As for the other, he has to find another way of connecting with them. For example, working with either the Congressional Black Caucus or Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Alternatively, he could also pick a VP like Tammy Duckworth from the Asian American community, a minority community which is increasingly politically powerful within the United States, and is a swing voting bloc that could vote either for Trump or Biden. Although indifferent of what specific approach he takes, Biden needs to really drive turnout among minority communities in swing states. Those are the strategies that Biden needs in order to win. If you enjoyed this video, please click the subscribe and like buttons. Also, if you're interested, we have further readings in the description. Have a great day. Bye!